The Gathering Storm. The Great Chamber of the Galactic Federation Council had witnessed many historic moments over its 800 years of operation. Wars declared, peace treaties signed, entire species welcomed into the cosmic community. But nothing quite like this. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the speaker's podium, her hands folded calmly behind her back. Her voice carried clearly through the crystalline acoustics of the chamber as she addressed the assembled representatives of 47 different worlds. Honored counselors, after careful consideration, the United Earth Coalition formally withdraws from the Galactic Federation, effective immediately. The silence that followed was deafening. Prime Counselor Theiss, his reptilian features frozen in disbelief, was the first to find his voice. Ambassador Chen, surely this is some form of negotiating tactic. Humans don't simply walk away from agreements. Sarah's expression remained unchanged. With respect, Prime Counselor, we are not walking away from an agreement. We are ending a relationship that no longer serves mutual interests. The chamber erupted into a cacophony of hisses, clicks, and electronic translations as 47 different species tried to process what they were hearing. Minister Vorth, the Federation's chief economic advisor, his crystalline form pulsing with agitation, accessed his datapad with trembling appendages. Ambassador, the economic implications alone make this impossible. Human colonies contribute 23% of Federation GDP. Your research facilities provide 38% of our medical advances. Your engineers maintain 62% of our hyperspace communication networks, all of which will cease. Sarah replied matter-of-factly. We have already begun transferring critical infrastructure to Federation personnel. What cannot be transferred will be shut down safely. Dr. Cale Morvan, sitting in the human delegation section, watched the proceedings with quiet satisfaction. 3 months ago, his breakthrough research on quantum consciousness mapping had been declared too dangerous for single-species control and forcibly shared across the Federation. His protests about intellectual property rights had been dismissed with patronizing references to the greater good. Prime Counselor Theiss rose to his full imposing height. This is clearly a response to recent Council decisions. We can discuss modifications to the technology sharing protocols. The technology sharing protocols were just the final straw, Sarah answered. For 37 years, humanity has contributed disproportionately to Federation advancement while being consistently denied equal representation in decision-making. We have been treated as useful junior partners rather than equal members. The Arcturian trade representative, her bioluminescent patches flickering nervously, interjected, "But surely accommodations can be made, perhaps expanded territorial rights?" Sarah accessed her own datapad, and a holographic display filled the center of the chamber. It showed a detailed breakdown of human contributions versus representation over the past decade. Human colonies produce 41% of Federation raw materials, yet we hold only 8% of Council votes. Human scientists author 53% of published research, yet our proposals for new research directions are approved at a rate of 12%. Human ships provide 37% of Federation defense capabilities, yet we are excluded from strategic planning committees. The numbers hung in the air like an indictment. Minister Vorth's crystalline form had dimmed considerably as he cross-referenced the data with his own records. These statistics, they're accurate, he whispered to his aide. How did we not see this pattern? Prime Counselor Theiss attempted to regain control of the situation. Ambassador Chen, humanity has been valued members of this Federation since first contact. If there have been oversights in representation, they can be corrected. 37 years of oversights, Prime Counselor, and they were not oversights. They were deliberate policies based on the assumption that humans would accept any treatment as long as we were allowed to participate. Dr. Morvan remembered the private conversations with fellow human scientists, the growing frustration with having their research appropriated, their recommendations ignored, their expertise utilized but never properly credited. the moment when someone had first suggested that maybe they didn't need the Federation as much as the Federation needed them. The Centaurian Defense Minister, General Krex, had been notably silent until now. His species valued directness, and he appreciated what he was seeing. "How long have you been planning this withdrawal?" he asked. For the first time, Sarah smiled slightly. "General, humans are excellent at contingency planning. We began developing alternative infrastructure approximately 5 years ago." The implication sent shockwaves through the chamber. 5 years ago, the Federation had voted to restrict human expansion into the outer spiral arms, claiming those territories needed to remain available for emerging species. Minister Vorth was frantically accessing his economic databases. Alternative infrastructure? What alternative infrastructure? Sarah's aide activated a new holographic display. It showed star charts of regions beyond Federation space, dotted with construction markers and resource extraction signatures. 17 new colonies, 8 major industrial complexes, 4 advanced research facilities, and 2 complete hyperdrive manufacturing centers. All operational, all self-sufficient, all located in unclaimed space beyond Federation territory. The chamber fell silent again, as the full scope of human preparation became clear. They had not simply decided to leave. They had spent years building somewhere else to go. Prime Counselor Theis's voice carried a note of desperation. "Ambassador Chen, the Federation values humanity's contributions. We can discuss expanded representation, increased autonomy, even special status provisions." "Prime Counselor, we appreciate the offer, but we have made our decision." Dr. Morvan watched as various council members began accessing their own databases, finally calculating just how dependent they had become on human contributions. The growing horror on their faces as they realized the scope of what they were about to lose was almost amusing. The Rigelian medical representative, Dr. Jay, spoke up with barely controlled panic. "Ambassador, 40% of Federation medical personnel trained in human institutions. Our entire surgical protocol system is based on human innovations. Our pharmaceutical research depends on human biochemical databases, all of which will remain accessible for 90 days during the transition period," Sarah replied calmly. "After that, these resources will be restricted to human colonies and allied independent worlds." "Allied independent worlds?" Prime Counselor Theis seized on the phrase. "What allied worlds?" Sarah's aide activated another display, showing diplomatic treaties recently signed with 12 non-Federation species, resource-sharing agreements, mutual defense pacts, technology exchange programs, an entire parallel diplomatic network that had been quietly constructed while the Federation focused on restricting human activities. Minister Vorth's calculations were complete, and his crystalline form was now barely glowing. The economic impact of human withdrawal would reduce Federation GDP by 31% in the first year. Critical infrastructure failures would begin within weeks. Research and development would slow to pre-human contact levels. "Minister Vorth is correct," Sarah acknowledged. "We understand this will create hardships. It was not our preferred outcome." "Then why proceed?" demanded the Alderanian cultural attaché. "Because 37 years of asking for equal treatment yielded 37 years of excuses and delays. Humans do not thrive in subordinate roles, and we will not accept them indefinitely for the sake of convenience." The truth of it settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. For decades, the Federation had benefited enormously from human membership, while simultaneously keeping humans in a controlled junior status. The assumption had always been that humans needed the Federation more than the Federation needed humans. Prime Counselor Theis made one final attempt. "Ambassador Chen, what would it take for humanity to reconsider this decision?" Sarah gathered her materials and prepared to leave the podium. "Prime Counselor, that question should have been asked 37 years ago, or 27 years ago, or even 7 years ago, but not today." She paused at the edge of the speaker's platform and looked back at the assembled representatives. "Humans have a saying, actions have consequences. For 37 years, the Federation chose to treat us as useful subordinates rather than equal partners. Today, you are experiencing the consequences of those choices. As Ambassador Chen and the human delegation filed out of the chamber, emergency communications began flooding in from across Federation space. Human evacuation ships were already departing from dozens of colonies. Research facilities were being systematically shut down. Critical infrastructure was being transferred to local control or deactivated entirely. Minister Vorth stared at his economic projections with growing despair. The Rigelian medical systems were calling for emergency support, the Centaurian defense. eGrid was reporting maintenance failures. The hyperspace communication network was showing cascading errors as human-built relay stations went offline. Prime Counselor Theiss remained standing long after the chamber had emptied, staring at the space where the human delegation had been. For 800 years, the Federation had grown through careful expansion and calculated integration. Species joined because membership offered clear benefits and security. But humans were different. They had not needed the Federation's protection or economic support. They had joined as equals, offering partnership, and had been gradually relegated to the status of valuable subordinates. Now they were leaving, and taking with them the infrastructure that had become essential to Federation civilization. Outside the Great Chamber, the first human evacuation convoy was visible through the massive viewport windows. 73 ships carrying the last human presence in Federation space, moving in perfect formation toward the hyperspace jump coordinates. At exactly 1847 Galactic Standard Time, they engaged their hyperdrives and disappeared into the void, leaving behind an increasingly desperate galaxy and a Federation that was finally beginning to understand what they had lost. The empty galaxy. 6 months after the human departure, the full scope of the crisis was undeniable. Prime Counselor Theiss stood in his private office, reviewing reports that painted an increasingly grim picture of Federation space. Chief Engineer Zara, a Proximan whose expertise in matter-antimatter reactions had made her invaluable, entered with her latest assessment. Her usually steady hands trembled slightly as she activated the holographic display. Prime Counselor, 17 more hyperspace communication relays have failed this week. We simply don't have the technical knowledge to maintain the human-built system. The irony was bitter. For decades, Federation policy had encouraged species specialization. Humans had become the master engineers, the innovative problem solvers, the bridge between theoretical science and practical application. Now, those skills were gone, and the Federation was discovering how dependent they had become on human expertise. "What about the Rigelian Engineering Corps?" Theiss asked, though he already suspected the answer. "They're excellent theorists, but they lack practical experience with quantum matrix relays. Human engineers didn't just maintain these systems, they designed and built them from concepts that we barely understand." Dr. Elvon, the Federation's chief research coordinator, had been struggling with similar problems. His latest report lay on Theiss's desk, detailing the collapse of multiple research programs. Xenobiology studies had ground to a halt without human insights into adaptive evolution. Medical research was failing without access to human biochemical databases. Even basic materials science was suffering without human innovation in molecular engineering. Admiral Crix, the Federation's military commander, provided the most disturbing news. His report detailed security implications that kept Theiss awake at night. "Prime Counselor, our defense capabilities have deteriorated by 43%. Human-designed weapon systems are failing faster than we can repair them. Our strategic planning databases relied heavily on human tactical analysis. Without that input, we're essentially blind to emerging threats." The Admiral paused, his expression grim. "More concerning, our long-range sensors have detected evidence of human military buildup in their new territories. Advanced ship designs we don't recognize, defense installations using technologies we can't identify. They're not just surviving out there, they're thriving." This reviewed Tanj. He economic reports with growing despair. Minister Vorth's predictions had been optimistic. Federation GDP had dropped by 37%, not 31%. Unemployment was rising as human-dependent industries collapsed. Resource extraction had slowed dramatically without human mining innovations. Even agriculture was suffering without human biotechnology and soil management techniques. But perhaps most troubling were the defection reports. 7 non-Federation species had signed formal alliance agreements with the human colonies. 3 more were considering leaving the Federation entirely to join what was being called the Independent Worlds Coalition. Dr. Elvin entered the office, his expression more haggard than Thais had ever seen it. "Prime Counselor, I've completed the analysis of human preparations. The evidence suggests they began contingency planning not 5 years ago, but 20 years ago." The revelation was staggering. 20 years of quiet preparation while maintaining full participation in Federation activities, infrastructure development, resource stockpiling, technological advancement, diplomatic outreach, all hidden in plain sight while humans continued to contribute to Federation society. "How did we miss it?" Thais asked. "Because we weren't looking for it. We assumed human loyalty was guaranteed by the benefits of membership. We never considered that they might view the relationship as fundamentally unequal." Dr. Elvin activated a new analysis showing the sophistication of human planning. Resource extraction in distant systems had been presented as exploration projects. Industrial development had been classified as research facilities. Diplomatic contacts with independent species had been reported as cultural exchange programs. They followed every Federation regulation perfectly, while building an entirely separate civilization, Dr. Elvin continued. "They never lied to us. We simply never asked the right questions." The implications were sobering. While the Federation had been focused on managing and controlling human activities, humans had been creating alternatives to Federation dependence. Every restriction placed on human expansion had been quietly circumvented. Every limitation on human research had been offset by independent facilities. Every diplomatic constraint had been balanced by parallel negotiations. Admiral Crix returned with more disturbing intelligence. "Prime Counselor, our deep space reconnaissance has located several human colonies. The technological advancement is remarkable. They're using hyperdrive variants we've never seen, energy sources that exceed our theoretical maximums, manufacturing techniques that seem to violate known physics." "Impossible. They had access to the same research we did." "No, Prime Counselor. They had access to their research, which we then appropriated. But they also had access to human-specific research that was never shared with the Federation." The truth was becoming clear. Human scientists had been conducting dual research programs. They shared certain discoveries with the Federation, while keeping more advanced developments for human-only applications. The technology-sharing protocols had been a one-way street, with humans giving and the Federation taking, but humans had never stopped advancing independently. Minister Vorth arrived with the latest economic projections. His crystalline form, once brilliant with confidence, was now dim with despair. "Prime Counselor, we've received formal notice from the Centaurian Republic. They're requesting immediate renegotiation of resource-sharing agreements. Without human industrial capacity, we cannot meet our current commitments." The cascade of failures was accelerating. The Federation's economic stability had been built on human productivity. Their technological advancement had depended on human innovation. Their military security had relied on human strategic thinking. Their medical progress had utilized human research. Even their cultural development had been influenced by human creativity. Now, faced with the absence of these contributions, the true scope of human importance was becoming undeniable. Dr. Elvin presented his final analysis. "Prime Counselor, based on current trajectories, Federation technological advancement will regress to pre-human contact levels within 3 years. Economic recovery will require either massive internal restructuring or alternative solutions." What alternative solutions? Formal alliance with the Independent Worlds Coalition. Recognition of human colonies as sovereign territory. Negotiated cooperation agreements based on mutual benefit rather than membership subordination. The suggestion was almost treasonous. The Federation had never negotiated as an equal with former members. It would establish precedent for other species to consider similar departures. But the alternative was continued decline and possible collapse. Admiral Crix provided the final piece of disturbing intelligence. Prime Counselor, we've intercepted a message from the human colonies. It wasn't directed at us. It appears to be a general broadcast to all spacefaring civilizations. He activated a holographic display, and Ambassador Sarah Chen appeared, looking exactly as composed as she had 6 months earlier. To all intelligent species in the galaxy, the United Earth Coalition and the Independent Worlds Coalition extend greetings and an invitation to peaceful cooperation. We are establishing trade relationships, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense agreements with all interested civilizations, regardless of Federation membership status. The message continued, outlining terms that were remarkably generous. No subordinate status requirements. No forced technology sharing. No territorial restrictions. Equal representation in all decisions. Mutual benefit as the foundation of all relationships. They're offering everything we should have offered, Theiss realized with dawning horror. The message concluded with Ambassador Chen addressing the Federation directly. To our former colleagues in the Galactic Federation, we bear no animosity toward you. Our departure was not driven by anger, but by the recognition that our relationships had become fundamentally incompatible with human values of equality and self-determination. We remain open to future cooperation, but only on terms of mutual respect and genuine partnership. As the message ended, Theiss understood that humanity had not simply left the Federation. They had created a competing model of galactic civilization, one that attracted species through opportunity rather than control, through partnership rather than dominance. The Federation had spent 800 years as the dominant galactic power, growing through careful expansion and calculated advantage. But humans had shown there was another way, and other species were taking notice. Reports were coming in of Federation member species quietly establishing diplomatic contacts with human colonies. The Independent Worlds Coalition was growing rapidly, offering the kind of equal partnership that the Federation had never provided. Prime Counselor Theiss stood at his office viewport, looking out at the stars that had once seemed to be under Federation control. Somewhere in that vast darkness, humanity was building something new, something that might eventually surpass everything the Federation had achieved. The great irony was that humans had never sought to destroy the Federation. They had simply chosen to build something better elsewhere. But in doing so, they had revealed the Federation's fundamental weaknesses, its dependence on inequality, its assumption that power meant the right to subordinate others. Now the Federation faced a choice: adapt or decline, reform or stagnate, learn from humanity's example, or watch as more species chose independence over subordination. As Chief Engineer Zara reported another cascade failure in the hyperspace network, Theiss realized that the galaxy had changed forever. The age of Federation dominance was ending, and the age of human-inspired cooperation was beginning. The only question was whether the Federation would find a place in this new galaxy, or fade into history as a cautionary tale about the dangers of taking valuable partners for granted. In the end, humanity had won not through conquest, but through example, not through threats, but through alternatives, not through war, but through the simple act of walking away with dignity intact. It was, Theiss had to admit, a remarkably human solution to an impossible problem. The end.